Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of my favourite people and some of the world's biggest stars. And we've got one for you today. A man whose biggest hit, St. Elmo's Fire, has been, well, one of those songs around the world that gets played again and again and again. It's an epic song by an epic producer and writer, John Parr. And John will be appearing with Foreigner at the London Palladium on June the 7th, which is going to be an amazing gig. And he joins us now on the phone live from his home. How are you doing, John?
I'm great, Alex, and what a gig that is for me. I mean, Sunday night at the London Palladium, as a little lad watching that in workshop, in the, well, I guess it'd be late 50s, early 60s, right through Bruce Forsyth, and then, to be doing, and especially with Foreigner, I mean, we go back to the 80s, Foreigner and I, so it's going to be incredible.
I'm really fascinated by your life and career. It is interesting, isn't it, that really America made you, but we own you and we still love you, and this is where you've remained. I guess for you, Naughty Naughty was the beginning of the sort of rocket that shot you to fame.
It was, I'd been in England playing all the clubs in the north of England, boy to man, and thousands of trips to London with my little tapes and them saying, no, don't you ever listen to the radio, and, abusing me, and went to America in 83, and in 84 I'm top of the charts. It just shows you how crazy world it is.
What I'm most impressed about and what's most fascinating about your career is the people you've ended up working with. You must pinch yourself when you think Tina Turner, the Beach Boys, Celine Dion, Paul Anka, so many incredible people.
It's amazing. It's like I was blessed to... I mean, I came into the business at a high end, just at the end of vinyl, the beginning of CD. So you had this kind of older artists and the new artists still kind of on the scene. And when record companies really were a factory that were built on integrity and the quality of the product, and it wasn't just media, it was just sheer talent. And so for me to rub shoulders with, my peers, not just on the stage people, but, the Ahmed Erdigans and the Mutt Langs and people like that are giants of our industry.
You don't want to end up sounding like one of those old farts, but I do find myself saying I think you've had the best days time and time again to various comedians and stars like yourself. It is true, isn't it, that the music industry has sort of lost its heart to business?
Well, Alex, I have this theory about it, and it's awful to sound negative because obviously you've got young people listening. And the only thing I would say is, I think the greatest thing in life, obviously besides love and family, is the thing that makes us progress is competition.
Right.
And, if you look at, the 60s, 70s, 80s, the competition, just the wealth of ability that only really had the talent to compete with. And, the west coast of America, you'd get the Beach Boys playing something, and then Crosby, Stills and Nash would say, wow, if you heard what they're doing, we'd better get our act together. Then the Eagles, Johnny Mitchell. And then you look at Liverpool, and all those bands. And then the London scene, it was competition, upping your game. It's this thing about, going on the internet. The hard thing, yes, you can get to the world, but only if they can see your flag flying.
Yeah.
Everybody in their back gardens putting the flag up saying, look at me,
Yeah.
And it's very, very difficult. And that's why the style over content comes in. In the old days, we used to call it a gimmick, but now, it's like notoriety. It's gimmick only. It used to be gimmick to sell the talent. Now it's just gimmick to sell the gimmick, I think,
We mentioned earlier you're coming to the London Palladium on June the 7th. There's nothing quite like it. It is a palace of show business, isn't it?
It really is. And what's going to be great for me, that will be the first time I've walked through the doors.
Is that true?
Intimately, but I know it intimately. And, funnily enough, I know it a lot in black and white as well. That's the funny thing.
Do you mean walking through the stage door for the first time, or you've never actually been in the Palladium?
I've never walked through the doors of the Palladium.
Wow.
No, so it was...
That's a little overwhelming, isn't it?
Overwhelming, and a couple of years ago it was the same at the Albert Hall. I'd never been in, and then we went in and did a show with Richard Marx, and it was that same thing. And it was profound, I'd lost my father a few years ago, and it was almost like everything focused in on that one gig. He was there watching it, wow. And it was in my mind. And I think the Palladium will be like that too.
I guess you can't help but think of those who shared your dressing room previously. It's those ghosts, isn't it, that sort of rock your confidence in a way, because you're thinking, right, tonight I've really got to step up and do it.
That's the thing. That's what I'm saying about that competition. I mean, you're talking the best of all time. Coming from an era where, It wasn't technology. It wasn't anything. It was just a guy or a girl walking on stage and delivering and mesmerizing a crowd with the light of their talent and not the light of a thousand spotlights.
Yeah.
You know?
This is one of those questions you really can't answer, but I'll try it anyway. Do you wonder why you're asked to keep appearing with these great bands and come back? What's your genius that's made you survive?
Oh boy, I'm cheap. No, I think I don't know. I think, this what do we call it now? Vintage artists. They think what would be a good fit, and I think the other thing as well. One of the great things about the internet is people can check you out and they go, he's not just this guy that kind of, sings this great big song. He can do this stuff on the acoustic. They see a facet of you. It's like a shop window, isn't it? We used to call it shop windows in the old days. You do an audition and people could see what you did and sign you up. And I guess people can check you out, see if you're fat, see if you look 90, see if you can still do it. And I think, fortunately, I wouldn't do it if I got too much kind of pride, if you like, if I felt I couldn't still cut it. And I'm for me, when I get on the stage at Palladium, I'm as good as I am that night. It's nothing to do with my history or anything. It's only about that night, and I measure myself on that night, so...
Do you ever Google yourself? I mean, I'm looking here on YouTube. St. Elmo's Fire's had over 1.5 million. We look down the list, 991,000. It's amazing how many hits you've got and how many people are still clicking on your face to hear your music.
Do you know what's really weird? Something came out of the blue in February. I didn't know it was happening. Google took St. Elmo's Fire for their this year's campaign for their for their phone, and they used St. Elmo's Fire. And of course, you've got a completely different generation. The commercial was an animated commercial based on that game Rock Paper Scissors, yes. And it's just these little models, and it's an anti-bullying campaign. And within I think it's been on 8 weeks. It's done 7.5 million hits.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
You never know when that phone's going to ring, and it has for the Palladium again. I just want to talk about some of the amazing places you've played, because you've done huge audiences. Just give us an idea of the tens of thousands you've played to over the years.
Well, the biggest show I ever did, live show, I did was with Brian Adams, when it was when Brian's career took off just fractionally before mine, and he'd gone out into the world doing the Restless tour. So he was his return to Canada, not been back to Canada for over a year, and he said, do you want to open up for me? So we went, and I was 55,000 at the Red Sox Stadium, and it was fantastic, and Brian was real cool. He gave me the video screens. I went on with my Canadian guitar, and not many main artists would let the opening act go on with the video screens. He was great.
Is it always humbling when someone asks and they know who you are? Because that's the point you've made it. He's not going to put you on for you to kill the show, is he?
No, and it's funny because Brian's from a small town. He's Vancouver. Well, Vancouver's a city, but I mean, he's a small town boy that made big, yeah. And small town values really. And I think that's a good connection for us. And I don't think we've changed. I just think. I'd often see him. He probably sold 20 million records with that album, and I'd see him in an airport with a backpack on, and he'd go, "Hey mate, what are you doing here?" And he'd just be walking through, going to a gig.
Yeah.
Those were the days. It couldn't happen now, but that's how it was back then. Amazing.
How do you keep your nerve? I mean, I think that gig, you'd been out of it for something like 10 years. He brought you back. How do you stop yourself from sort of having a heart attack live in front of tens of thousands of people?
Yeah, it was tough, I mean, I was out of it. I got embroiled in a court case, which I won, but it froze me out for many years. So it's a bit like being heavyweight champ, and suddenly you're back down on the, in the beginning ranks again. Yeah. So there was that side of it. But for me, it's that thing I say about I'm as good as I am that night. I walk out there, St. Elmo's Fire. I mean, it was a gig in England. That one you're talking about was when he came to my town, and. So the audience, they know me. But really in England, there's only a couple of songs they know. And those songs are at the end of the set. So very often, I'm doing half an hour before anybody's heard anything they know. Right. So it's are the songs any good? And am I any good? I'm not surviving on pulling another hit out of my pocket, if you see what I mean, at that point. So it's always a good test, for me.
Nobody likes a big head, John. Are you an amazing guitarist, an amazing singer, or an amazing writer? Which one is it?
Well, I'm all that. I'm trying to be. really. I practice all the time. There'll be many hundreds of hours going before I go to Palladium. I don't gig so much, so I have to do a lot of rehearsal to keep myself sharp. It's funny, in this day and age of equipment, I still find myself investing far too heavily in recording equipment for my studio for stuff that 90% of people won't hear, because it's really high quality and it's not just going to be on your iPhone or whatever. It's just for the love of it, and I'm always, I was watching this thing on Ronaldo this morning, looking at his dedication to football, and looking at the Ayrton Senna documentary. And I'm not saying I am these people, but there's a great kinship when I look at their ethos of life, what they've sacrificed. I feel not alone. I feel a kindred spirit with that kind of person, because it is a tortured life when you devote yourself entirely, and you don't always get the result. I've had more misses than hits. And I'm sure many people have that have dedicated it, but it just makes you stronger. It doesn't make me give in.
Yeah, over the years, the one thing I've learned about greatness and achieving brilliance like you have is that there's an obsession that comes with it, that you are 100% into it and stop at nothing, because that's how you get there in the end. And you're right, there is a kinship between people like you and others. I mean, we look at Daltrey, that gig at Madison Square Garden. Again, how does a boy from Worksop wake up one morning in New York City? I still get a tingle when I go over that bridge. It never becomes normal. It's New York. And you're playing the most famous venue in the world.
Well, like we were talking about the Palladium, I used to get up with my dad and watch Muhammad Ali fight there.
Right.
It used to be on the satellite before 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'd watch the fights from Madison Square Garden. So never dreamed I'd be there. And then I wrote this song for Roger, and he told me, said, "You fancy doing it with me next week?" And I said, "Where?" And it was Madison Square Garden. And we did it as a duet, and it was, the band was, Who's Who, Entwistle was playing, Yoko Ono came up. There's just a stage full of who was the hottest thing on the planet at that time. Yeah. And little old me at the front with Roger, and it's just one of those incredible moments. I wasn't nervous, it went beautifully. But when you take some distance back and you think about it, then you realise the magnitude of it. Sometimes it's best not to see the mountain until you've climbed it,
Yeah, it's a very good point you make. And I wonder, of all those people you just mentioned, who were the stars who blew your mind that were even better than you thought they'd be? Lennon was there that night, for example. Generally, my people are kind of, they go from Don Henley to Tom Jones to Shirley Bassey to Jimi Hendrix to, it really is that kind of who's who. And it's very difficult, because I think a lot of people now, they look at that and they go, yeah, the Beatles were all right, oh, yeah, Hendrix was all right, whatever. But at that moment in time, it was like they came from another planet. It was like an invasion from an alien culture. It was that big a deal. It was so different, and the only thing you can say to anyone that doesn't get it is say, well, if you don't agree, how come 50 years later you can't walk down the road without seeing their picture? You can't turn the radio or TV on without hearing a reference to it. Also, that is true history. Well, and that's what I always say about Justin Bieber. As big as he is now, will we be listening to him in 50 years' time? I doubt it. It's just a different time, isn't it? It's like you get into the bedroom of those kids, on the internet, and he becomes theirs. Those artists become theirs, and they have this very intimate, private relationship. Yeah. I think a lot of that's to do with it. This insular thing of people on their phones and on their iPads and whatever, and they live on this thing. And if you can get in that and become that kind of go-between, it becomes the talking point for their friends. Yeah. Something like a little bridge. And I think that's what's happened with a lot of those acts. It's like a Lego brick that just,
fitted the gap, maybe.
The only thing is, though, like a Lego brick, it's slightly replaceable and can be sort of put back with something else pretty quick. And that seems to be what's happening, which is certainly not the case with you and your generation. What an honour talking to you. Very finally, about the height of your fame in America and here. How sexy was it? Because I'm a deeply unattractive man. I've never had girls screaming at me in their tens of thousands. Does that ever become normal?
No. I mean, the weird thing for me was when I first started touring America, we were doing like 10,000s with bands like Toto and Heart. So those bands weren't really very, they were musical bands, not necessarily, crazy audience bands. And then I remember going on the road with a couple of other acts that were that, and suddenly running for my life, being chased down the road and everything. It just depended what audience you were put in front of. And it was everything you can imagine. Yes, it was, first class travel, beautiful women, incredible lifestyle. Work-wise, the great thing that happened to me was it opened the door to Hollywood. I'd always dreamed of working in movie, and fortunately, that's the thing that happened for me. Opened that door, and I was able to do, a dozen Hollywood movies, which I never thought would happen.
And I guess the Grammy Award nomination is the cherry on the cake, really.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's that kind of calling card, it's the Olympic silver, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Congratulations on everything. What a remarkable life. And again, one of those songs, particularly St. Elmo's Fire, that is going to be played forever and ever and ever. It's a brilliant radio song, a genius bit of production. And you can hear it live with John Parr. He's appearing with Foreigner at the London Palladium on June 7th, 2016. I suggest you go and see it before the gig, because it might be just a little bit too overwhelming to take that all in, because it is a beautiful, beautiful theatre.
You have a little sit down.
Yeah, there you go. London Palladium, June 7th, you can see John Parr. Thank you so much for your time.
Alex,